I wanted to highlight some of the problems that you're having in doing your work, and in your testimony, some of the problems that you identified. You sent a letter to Secretary of State Blinken and Samantha Power, the administrator of USAID, in June of 2022. And in that letter, you cited that you were directed by Congress to conduct studies of the collapse of the Afghan military, that state and USAID were required by law to provide you information to be able to do that task, and that they were being prohibited from being able to assist, to provide you the information that you needed, and that you felt that it was thwarting your efforts. You contacted me. I then sent a letter to President Biden, transmitting the letter that you had sent. I asked this be submitted into the record, both your letter and mine. What's troubling is, in your testimony, you relate that you are still being thwarted, that you are not getting the information that you need to be able to do the job that Congress directed you in reviewing the withdrawal and really the circumstances in Afghanistan.
That is absolutely correct.
Now, I have not received a response to my letter to the president. Have you received responses from your letters that detail at all why that they're not providing you the information?
Welcome to my world, Chairman. We have not received the response back from Secretary of State or, well, anybody in the administration, really.
Now, you're the Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction. We're not talking small dollars here. You open on page 2 saying that most people would be surprised that more than $8 billion has been provided by the United States since our withdrawal. 3.5 billion of that from the Afghan Central Bank Reserve. But we are talking billions of taxpayers' dollars that are still being spent in Afghanistan, and yet your task of being able to assess the effectiveness, what's occurring with those funds, is being thwarted by lack of information.
That is correct.
Now, I do find interesting that even though you're being thwarted, you're still providing us information that's shocking. You indicate that the Taliban are able to benefit from these dollars, that both in fees that they provide, that they require, in directions to NGOs. Page 3, page 4, you go into basically schemes that result in actually taxpayers' dollars going right into the hands of the Taliban.
That is correct, but we're not getting that information on a regular basis from state or aid, or in the past from DOD, although DOD is not really doing much in Afghanistan anymore. We're clever. My agents and my analysts have sources. We've developed hundreds and hundreds of sources. I think we had more sources in Afghanistan than all the other IGs combined in the GAO. So we're still trying to get that information. But the best information, like actual contract data, actually the names of people, would be, it's best, and it should by law, come from state and aid.
I think it's shocking that the Biden administration would not want you to be able to do your job, and that billions of dollars of taxpayers' monies are by your assessment going directly into the hands of the Taliban. You also, in your testimony, speak of the collapse of the Afghan military, and you speak of it as in that our military was integrated into their military, really the difficulty of them being able to operate. Could you just speak for a moment of that literally it had to be known by the administration that when they abruptly pulled our military from the Afghan military, that they would be incapable of continuing to operate?
That's a very good point, and it's one that we repeatedly made to every administration, that we built an Afghan military that looked like and would rely totally on the U.S. military. Now, we have a great military, the best in the world. But the problem is you were dealing with an illiterate country, basically, and trying to give them very sophisticated, and we forced them to take very sophisticated U.S. and Western hardware that they could not supply or fix or whatever. And particularly when we saw the Doha Agreement, and everybody focused on the troops leaving, but the Doha Agreement, which was then ratified by the Biden administration, specifically says the contractors have to leave. And we knew once the contractors were leaving, it was going to collapse. And if you talk to the Afghan generals, and I highly recommend as you go forth in your investigation, talk to General Sami Sadat, who was one of the best Afghan generals that fought there. He was head of the special forces in Afghanistan. And he can give you chapter and verse what happened when all of a sudden they couldn't repair their helicopters. That's when Afghans started dying dramatically. And that was the problem. The problem is they could not repair those. The irony is the Afghans were capable of repairing the old Soviet military equipment. But we decided, for whatever policy reason, to not give them Soviet military equipment anymore, or former Soviet, but to give them U.S. equipment. Excellent equipment, but it pushed back by years, by decades, the ability of the Afghans to prepare or repair their equipment.